Anyway, just to start off, some background. This was supposed to happen in May. This was supposed to be part of the celebration of Community Living Month. We got sidetracked a bit because of the budget situation, and there was a decision that Community Living wouldn't even show up to day at the legislature in a mild protest, if you will. So that threw some confusion into what we're going to do for Community Living Month. And one of the events we had was the spring fling, and for those who attended the spring fling, Jeanette, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a good time there? It was good music, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike, did you have a good time there?
Yes, I did.
You did.
I enjoyed it a lot.
So we do those kinds of events, but we also try to educate people. If you recall, the year before, what movie did we show to the public?
Inclusion of the institution.
The closing of the institution. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And where I was.
And that's where you were, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then where I was.
So we showed that last year, and so this year, as part of our educational, we decided to let people know about the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Now, before I introduce Anna, I would like to say that some of us had the experience and pleasure of going to this conference, which was the Human Rights and Persons with Intellectual Disabilities Conference. And Mike and Sandra was there, I think, and myself and a few others. It was probably one of the best conferences I've ever experienced. The speakers were from all over the world. And they were talking about one of the main things, which is the UN Convention on Human Rights for People with Disabilities. And we're hoping that those people in the Niagara area who put that on will do that every 2 or 3 years. It was a conference that I think was groundbreaking, and a lot of achievements are going on about the movement of rights for people. So we decided that we would bring one of the experts on the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And this is sort of an introduction to this topic, because we haven't talked about it much, and we haven't promoted it much. And today's our day to start helping people understand what it's about. And so who we have here with us today is Anna McQuarrie, and she's the Director of Policy and Programs for the Canadian Association for Community Living. And by the way, are we members of that organization, the Canadian Association for Community Living?
Yes.
We are,
Yeah.
because we're members of Community Living Ontario. And they are members, and so we're all part of that big umbrella. And she has a master's degree in human rights from the University of Essex. She has worked with the Canadian Association for Community Living for the past 7 years with a domestic and international focus on the rights of persons with intellectual disabilities. So I'd like to turn it over now to Anna. And it should be a fairly informal group here. So I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Marty. As Marty mentioned, my name is Anna McQuarrie. We did do a little bit of a roundtable, so do you maybe want to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Caroline Verbakel, and I'm a teacher with the Thames Valley District School Board.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
So before I jump into it, I will do just a little bit of background on the Canadian Association for Community Living. So as Marty said, you guys are members of Community Living Ontario, who in turn are members of the Canadian Association for Community Living. And that's the model that we have across the country. So we have 13 provincial territorial associations for community living, many of whom in turn have local associations for community living. Everyone's autonomous, runs their own organizations, but we all sort of form our broader movement of community living. CACL in turn federates up into an international body called Inclusion International. So really you're not only ending membership at the national level, you guys are also members of Inclusion International by virtue of being members of the Canadian Association for Community Living. Inclusion International is an international federation of about close to 200 members from about, I think, 118 countries around the world, whose focus is people with intellectual disabilities. And again, similar to our own federation, some different organizations. Many here in Canada, we've really developed strong People First of Canada movement, People First Ontario, there's many People First organizations across the country. We also have family networks, and that's kind of similar to the type of membership that we've got in Inclusion International. They may have some really large organizations from the UK, for example, but they might also have really small parent groups who are still meeting in church basements in, you know, little communities in Zambia, in Africa. So a pretty wide group of people to bring to the table. The Canadian Association has a long history of engaging internationally. We think the international work is really important to the work that we do, both because we believe we have information we can share, but also that we can learn a lot from what's going on in other countries as well. So that's kind of who I am and the organizations that I'm with. Marty was kind enough to read out a bit of a bio about who I am. That's sort of interesting, I think, more often what doesn't make the bio. There's a few things in there that aren't, sort of my bio doesn't say some things about who I am. One, I've never been to Tillsonburg before, so thank you very much for having me here. I've never been, I know. So that's a new experience for me. Another thing that my bio doesn't say about me that's really, really important for meetings is that I talk too fast. When I get excited, and I get excited about the convention a lot, I get going too quickly. So I need some help from you guys to help slow me down if I start going really quickly, which I have a very bad habit of doing. Another thing that isn't in my bio, because it's not a fact about me, but I think it's kind of interesting when we talk about the UN Convention, and it's pretty simple. It's that I'm not a lawyer. I work for a community organization. I am a civil society person, as we call it. And I have a master's degree in human rights, but I do not have any form of law degree or anything along those lines, which I think is important to share because it sort of sets the tone for the convention a little bit. Who developed it, how it got developed. Do you want to hand out some of that stuff?
Yeah, just making sure.
Sure. So we have a document that was created by Inclusion International that looks at some of the priorities in the convention for people with intellectual disabilities. So that's what we're here today to talk about, is the UN Convention. Do people have a general idea of what the convention is? Have they heard of it before? It's this random thing that's been floating around a little bit. So what the convention is, conventions sometimes sound a bit like something that we go to, right? We sometimes talk about going to a convention. This is really different from that. This is an international human rights treaty, is another word that we use, which is a sort of a fancy word for law. It's an international human rights law document. And it's a convention that has been worked on for a number of years, and I'll walk through a lot of that stuff, but it's pretty exciting because for one of the first times, it's only been since March 11th, that I've been able to start presentations by saying that Canada ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in March of this year. So really not so long ago, this convention, this international law, became international law here in Canada. Canada has agreed to treat this like law, and that's important for a number of reasons. And we'll get into that as we get through the presentation.